evening and welcome to the 599th episode of Travl. I'm Dan Schlossberg. Roger Noriega is not with us tonight, but we are in the 14th season of Travl Radio, the show that lets you enjoy the pleasure of travel from the comfort of your armchair. Every week at this time, we talk to people representing destinations, hotels, airlines, railroads, car rental companies, and others in the world of travel and hospitalities, from author and bloggers to broadcasters and publicists. If it's got anything to do with travel, it's got everything to do with Travl. Our guest today is Irvina Liu, journalist, author, award-winning travel writer. Welcome, Irvina, to the new video Travl.
I'm so excited to be here, Dan, and so good to see you again.
Thank you. Well, next week marks the 600th anniversary of Travl. We are celebrating with an hour-long video cast, but in the 14-year run of the show, we've seldom done anything with cooking or cuisine, mainly because I'm a meat and potatoes guy who loves hot dogs and hamburgers. But we're making an exception tonight, talking French food with noted Francophile Irvina Liu, author of Forays in France, a flavorful memoir, and lover of French chocolate. So, Irvina, how did you go from studying at the Sorbonne and teaching French to becoming an award-winning travel writer?
Well, the travel writing started out because I wrote a book for working mothers way back in '86. And before I could find a publisher for that, I kept looking at agents, and agents said, were you ever published? And I said, no. But I walked away from those agents saying, oh my God, I got to get published. What do I know about? And I knew about food. I knew about sailing. And I set about finding work writing, and I became the dining. I say this because the editor then is coming to dinner tomorrow night. I became the dining contributor to New York nightlife. And for 5 years, I wrote about restaurants in New York City. It was just a great gig. And from New York City, it was like, well, if I can write about restaurants in New York City, why not Paris? Why not Los Angeles? And that's how it happened.
What will readers find in Forays in France?
Well, Forays in France is a bunch of anecdotes, many anecdotes from, I'd like to say from the age of 18 to 80, but I was in Paris when I was 19, and I'm only 4 years away from 90. So it's sort of 19 to nearly 90. And it's divided into Paris, wine regions, and the French Riviera, places that I love and go back to again and again. And it's destination oriented, but each of the destinations, there are all these little personal anecdotes and a couple of things that, like what I make at home that I learned about eating there, whether it's eating in somebody's home, which I've only done once in France, but cooking schools and all kinds of wonderful experiences. And by the way, I'm a meat and potatoes person, but I like my meat like with peppercorns, and my potatoes might be a little bit more fluffy than other people. I dip my baked potatoes in baking soda. I have all kinds of techniques. So I'm maybe a little bit fussier than the normal meat and potato person.
Have you done other books that reflect your love of Paris, the Riviera, and more?
No, I have a million articles, and they're listed. They're when I publish an article, because I write for a bunch of magazines, I then have them posted on my website. So they're at irvinaliu.com. And if you go to foraysinfrance.com, it'll also link over. So I have hundreds of articles but the article might be about a specific restaurant or a specific hotel, or bringing your children to Paris, or the beaches of the Riviera, or museums. They're very, as articles are, they're very specific. The only reason I just want to add this, the only reason I stayed home long enough to write a book was because of COVID. And all I could think about was France. And so I started writing about it.
Since you went to the Sorbonne at 19 and returned as an octogenarian, how have things changed there over the years?
The only thing I noticed was that there were 2 security guards at each entry. And they asked to see your student ID that you're going for class. You walk into the building and you walk into the courtyard. It was the 13th century university. And the building is like 19th century, maybe 20th, early 20th century. So it feels the same. I went into one of those rooms, a lecture room, where Dior spoke and the French fashion people, and it's just the same. Except, as I said, a sad note to the Times that there are a couple of security guards now.
Happens everywhere. How well do you speak French? I know you were a teacher for 33 years. I know you practice it on Zoom,
I
certainly your numerous
do.
trips.
I am involved with about 6 other people on a weekly Zoom call. I I'm proud to say that when I speak in France, people always know that I'm American, and they very, very often compliment me. That does not mean to say that I have a vocabulary equal to English. I well, look, sometimes I'm looking for a word in English too, but I there are a lot of words in French that I don't know.
What's the best thing about renting an apartment, which you did, rather than staying in a hotel? More bang for your buck?
Well, it's not just the money; it's having a kitchen. Uh, I, as a travel writer, I used to go and spend 2 nights here, 3 nights there, 4 nights here, and run around because I wanted to see everything. And I still do that to some extent. But on the Riviera, I've now rented 5 times, and we have a kitchen, so I can go to the market and I get the fresh organic eggs, which they sell individually, or a six. I buy all the fresh vegetables and produce. I only eat home occasionally because we eat lunch out or dinner out every day. But I love having a kitchen, and I love having charcuterie in the refrigerator. The other thing is that I have a place to leave my luggage. So if I want to go overnight someplace, which I do now, I used to drive, but now I take a train. So if I want to go overnight to Ventimiglia in Italy, or to Monte Carlo, or to Saint Tropez, we've taken the ferry from Cannes to Saint Tropez. You just take your overnight bag and you leave your other luggage in the apartment. And yes, it is much cheaper. I think you can spend $150 a night. I think in low season I spend less than 100. My friend and I each pay half. So let's say we pay 200, 250 a night, where you can't get a decent hotel, um, with terraces. And there you go. I love having a place.
Your book has a chapter called Good Ideas. Give us a couple of tips our viewers might find valuable.
Well, the reason I wrote that was because I've written a lot of different ideas that work articles. The first thing that anybody going to France has to understand is, in France, everybody, whether they have a stall at a farmer's market or they're in the fanciest restaurant, you must greet them, bonjour, monsieur, bonjour, madame. It does not, you can say bonjour, monsieur. It doesn't matter. You must give them the courtesy of the greeting. Americans, and we were just talking about my granddaughter, you say, hi, do you have tickets to a baseball game? First, you're supposed to say, hi, how are you? I hope you're doing well. We don't always do that in the United States. And we can often just say, hello, do you know, or how much is this? And in France, they will respond to you with bonjour, madame, like it's almost rude, but they're telling you that you are being rude by not greeting them. So that's an important thing. Secondly, and this is just obvious, but we don't know it, you have to confirm everything. You have to confirm your hotels, you have to confirm your restaurants. The first time I didn't do that, I arrived late, like at 7 or 8 o'clock at night at the hotel, and the owner had given away my room to the next somebody who just walked in off the street because I hadn't confirmed. And I ended up in this tiny room. I swear you could touch the bidet from the bed. That's
Right.
how tiny the room was. So that taught me very well. You send a text or an email to confirm your reservations. I could go on and on, but
Well,
let's
since you usually travel alone or with one companion, do you recommend small group tours for people who might not be comfortable traveling alone?
Yes, I certainly, and certainly if you're a beginner, it's one thing to go back to the same apartment 5 times afterwards. But the first time, I'm not a fan of 35 people climbing on and off a bus. Um, some people love it. They like the idea that somebody's picking up their luggage at your door. I've always found I can pay a euro or two and somebody will carry my luggage. So I don't think that's a reason to take a 30-person tour. I like and have done barge cruises for 6 or 12 people, or riverboat cruises for 50 or 100, cooking schools. I was with a woman at a cooking school while her husband was doing a military tour, or there are just so many athletic things. And you can study French in a university for 3 weeks or a week. There are just lots of small group tours, and I travel around the world to spas because from a spa you have all your meals taken care of, like on a riverboat. A lot of the challenge is worrying about where you're going to eat your next meal. It's a big decision 2 or 3 times a day. So if you go to a place where your meals are included, and then you take a morning to do this or to do that or to get a driver or take a tour, that's what I like. But it's a matter of preference.
Is there such a thing as the ugly American syndrome? And what about issues with currency, customs, and language?
Well, the ugly American syndrome is what I addressed with greeting people. Americans tend to, how much is this? And speak to people like that. It's not polite. The French tend to have you'll see flowers in window boxes. There's a little bit of that uh, niceties that they expect, and Americans don't always do it. And Americans think that it's fine. Well, you get on an airplane, it's like people are in their pajamas. You go to a restaurant, you go to the theater. I mean, I swear I went to see Fiddler recently at a local playhouse. It was a wonderful production. The audience looked like they were going to the gym on a Saturday morning. I don't get it. So in France, people dress nicely. People don't, it's just how you do it. So did I lose thought? You want me to go on to the currency? The euro is simple. I go to AAA and get my euro. I do carry cash. Not everybody does. I use cash at the markets. I use cash a lot. I always leave a cash tip because I think people like cash. So I carry some cash. And I always make sure I have enough cash for a $50 or $100 cab ride because not every taxi driver, even those that should, take cash. By the way, I use Uber. And I use Uber rather than G7 because if you have a problem with a driver, it's Uber will help you right away and refund your money. G7 is it's in French, it's a little bit, it's not the same customer service, in my opinion. Excuse me.
Am I correct in saying that the prevailing attitude in France is laissez-faire?
I don't know. I maybe because I greet people in French, people greet me very warmly. Um, I have experienced ageism because I'm a little old lady. I did not experience it at 60, 65, 70, or 75. I was remarkably accepted as a really interesting person until just, I would say, it was a trip after COVID, and we went to a restaurant. I sent an email to the concierge. I happened to have had one nice hotel, so I asked that concierge to make the reservation, and they booked me. But then when we got there, they sat me like behind a staircase in another room, and my friend, we were ready to walk out rather than stay there. But that didn't happen until I was, an octogenarian. So you do find a little ageism, but I don't find that snobism about the French towards Americans is very, very old. It doesn't exist. And I find that if you're nice to them, they're very, very nice. And the French happen to be they're less outgoing than Americans. You're not going to, I mean, I'll invite a stranger to my home. They don't do that. It's not their style. But polite and willing. I've had conductors on trains. It's a story in the book where I lost my computer bag with my airline ticket, with everything important in your computer bag. And it dropped off the platform as the train doors closed in Paris. I don't know how many conductors and people got me that computer bag the next day in a little rural town in 2 trains away. So I mean, they really go out of your way for you.
That's nice to hear. We're talking all things France with Irvina Lou, friend, Francophile, and author of Forays in France. Franklin D. Roosevelt once said, "We have nothing to fear but fear itself." Is fear a factor for women planning to go overseas or even to travel domestically?
I think so, very much. And I think that I have been told this as well. Uh, the book is inspiring for mature women or people who are fearful because there are so many nice ways to travel. And you hear about people, I hear from people, uh, lots of widows, lots of divorced people, well, and I hear from men all the time. Well, I used to travel with my wife. I used to do this with my wife, but alone, they don't do it. Now, men are such a rare commodity that if any of them book a package tour, there'll be 3 single men and every woman will want to sit with them at dinner. So I don't, and at a spa, a man is like, oh my God, you go to a spa where you're prepped all day and massaged and everything else. If there's a man there, he's going to be wanted. Anyway, anyway, but I think people are fearful. And look, there are challenges. It's no fun eating alone. I try to eat at a bar or go back to a place I know, or I'll do a fine dining thing where the waiters spoil you. Um, but aside from eating dinner alone, which is the only thing about traveling alone I don't like, you people talk to people who are alone. You meet so many more people when you're alone than when you're in your own little bubble. And I think that if you're open to it, and you can be alone and also at a cooking school or on a barge tour, you get off the barge, you ride your bicycle into a village, and you're alone, and yet you still have the little cocoon to go back to. So, yeah, I think people are more fearful than they need to be.
Speaking of fear, do you pay attention to State Department warnings about other countries?
I do, but I can't tell you how many times I went to Israel when the State Department had warnings. And it's always an ongoing decision. Before I got involved in this COVID era shutdown and writing about France, I traveled around the world. We were in Thailand at a convention when the red shirts were marching. And I don't know if they were marching when we left, but they sure as hell were marching when we were there. And and then there are the things where I stopped writing about a certain state that was stopping and frisking people for no reason. I love the spas in that state, but I'm not sending people. I have my own little political side, and I'm not going to write about a country that does X, Y, or Z. But and you have to make a decision. For example, politically, I'm not a fan of Erdogan. As a traveler, I love Turkey. I never knew I would, uh, but I loved it. And I think that sometimes I and the rest of us have to divorce the government from the people. And not saying go where it's unsafe, but sometimes you have to put your politics aside, and people are genuinely, I find them wonderful around the world.
Well, I know what you're talking about because I was in Haiti about 2 weeks before Duvalier was ousted.
Oh, wow.
Baby doc.
Right.
And the tension was unbelievable. You could really feel it.
I was in Haiti as a young girl. My aunt and uncle took me on my first international trip on a Caribbean cruise. So I was there like in the 50s I was a high school student. Oh my God, the poverty was unbelievable, but I couldn't, uh, yeah, and it's just so sad. Yeah.
This is Travel Itch with Dan Schlossberg. Roger Noriega is not with us tonight, but he'll be back next week for our 600th episode. We're in our 14th season, and we'll mark that with an hour-long episode next week, Thursday, June 19th. We're live at 5 New York time every Thursday on LinkedIn, YouTube, WhatsApp, X, Facebook, and others. Irvina, do you belong to NAJTA, IFW, TWA, SATW, or other travel writers associations? And do
I
you go to major events like IMM, IPW? And how do those memberships help you?
I do. Well, I'll tell you just yesterday, I belong to Society of American Travel Writers, SATW. I belong to American Society of Journalists and Authors and have since the 80s. I became a member of SATW when I learned about it. Um, and yes, it has helped me a great deal. Well, during COVID, they started Zooming. And I go to all these virtual things. Yesterday, I met with I don't know how many people, 8 people on a virtual media marketplace. And yes, I go to IMM and to as many different conventions as possible. Um, I can't do well. Can I tell you the name of my first book? It was called You Can't Do It All. I can't do them all,
I love it.
but I think I just joined a new organization. I believe in organizations. I believe in groups and the power of groups. This month, I just joined Long Island Authors because I wanted to get feedback from local authors. Uh, I had been published by Macmillan and had 8 city tours. And for this book, it's a passion project. It's not a conventional travel log. It's a memoir, and I wanted to meet other people who'd self-published. And so, yeah, the answer is yes, yes, yes.
Are most of your trips at home or abroad? And do you like to try new places or go back to places that you liked before?
Well, I do both, but I'm thinking of going to Australia, but I do love to go back to where I've been. And I've been doing that in France a lot. But every time I'm there, including this, I was just in the south of France for 3 weeks. I went to 2 new villages. So what I do is I may go back to Paris, but on one trip I'll go to the Loire Valley. On another trip I'll go to the Champagne region. On another trip I'll do something else. So I always add new things. But I think I do both.
And do you make your own assignments or do you accept or you pitch editors first? What do you do?
I pitch editors with assignments. I tend these days, early on, I was pitching stories like crazy. And yes, I got my chocolate story was I pitched best chocolate desserts in Paris and I got it. But most of the time now I work with the same editors and I pitch them stories that I want. What I found was when I wrote for, let's say, Condé Nast Traveler, which I did, but every time I would pitch a story, it was, well, there are 100 other people or blah, blah, blah. I can't even get my stuff published. And then I had other stories that I pitched, and I found out that they were writing my story themselves, or, they would take my well-researched pitch and give it to an editor or to, a favorite. So I like to work with, I work with a bunch of niche publications. I write about food, wine, travel, spa, and I'll give you, they're all on my website. It's Real Food Traveler, Insider's Guide to Spas. I write for New York Lifestyles. I write for Global Traveler USA, which is a luxury business magazine. And, there are plenty of others, but it's sort of like with editors that I like. And remember, I am 86 years old. I don't have to hustle like I did when I first retired from teaching and I was making the second career happen. I just, you know, I'll work and I'll travel, but I'm not going to hustle in that way. I'll hustle to promote this book, though.
We're talking France with Irvina Lou, friend, Francophile, and author of Forays in France. Irvina, what, in your opinion, are some new places women should visit?
New places women should visit. Uh, wow. I can't say it's new. But if you're a woman and you like fashion and you like looking at people and you like eating and you like art and you like museums and you like the beach and you like the mountains and you like beauty, the south of France is really my number one spot in the world. Now, there are places in Italy that I would rank up there too, but I don't speak Italian fluently, so I don't go there as often. Where should women go? Do they like? I'm going to say LA. I'm West Hollywood, Beverly Hills. I mean, women, people. I just think cities, walkable cities. I love Charleston. And of course, there are a million walkable cities in France. Should I only speak about France?
No, anything.
Well, I'm thinking about St. Augustine because I spoke to a woman yesterday about St. Augustine. I haven't been there in 20 years and I'm going to go back. But I like little walkable places, little walkable cities. Like that's why I rent in Cannes, because you can walk to all the restaurants. And when you feel like it, you can go to the most luxurious hotels and have a drink. So you spend $30 on a drink, but then you go and have a pizza for dinner. Yeah, it's what I like to do. I can only speak for me.
Really quickly, let's hear about your favorite French recipes and restaurants.
Well, I'm going to go to the chocolate one. The favorite chocolate dessert was that molten chocolate cake that I had years ago at Michel Rostang in Paris. But just recently in January, I sent my niece there with 7 people the other night, and she had a great time. This restaurant is opened in January, a week before I got there, and it's called Margaux, Margaux. And it's a small little French bistro that happens to be located on the Seine River, just across from the Eiffel Tower. So you have this beauty of the Eiffel Tower twinkling. Ombre, which I ate in last November when I was in Paris, is a Ducasse restaurant. And Alain Ducasse is my favorite chef. And this particular restaurant has fixed price meals. We had the least expensive, and it was well under $100. Many of them I've paid like $285 for a fixed price Michelin star meal, but this was maybe $88 or something euros. So it was really reasonable for a very high gastronomic meal with a view of the Eiffel Tower. Then there's a little place. These owners both worked for Alain Ducasse, and it's right near the Sorbonne in the 5th arrondissement, and it's called Le Perraudin, Perraudin, and it's just a little not expensive bistro. And there are wonderful places in the 7th. We ate at Travl Folie, which is a truffle place. Everything has truffles. Oh my God. You can buy truffles. You eat pasta with truffles. It's just delicious. And I think I'm going to have a lot of these I'm going to write about that as a blog on my foraysinfrance.com website. Can you tell your viewers that they can pre-order my books in paperback or hardcover or on foraysinfrance.com?
That's terrific. You must have a long list of likes and dislikes relating to your travel experiences, but our audience is waiting to hear about your favorite neighborhoods in Paris.
Well, I really like the 6th, probably the best. It's Saint-Germain, and it's where the Les Deux Magots is, and all the writers live there. And there are little local places that aren't too pricey. In fact, We ate at a restaurant right across from Hotel Bel Ami, which I love. Let me think. It's called Le Relais de l'Entrecôte. Relais is Relais, like Relais and Chateau. Entrecôte is like the cut of beef. And the first time I stayed there in 2018, I saw these long, long, long lines. I went back to stay there in 2021. And there were these long, long, long lines. Well, one day I didn't see any line. So my friend and I said, let's get on the front of the line. Didn't know that we had to wait till the place opened. But they had a steak and potato dinner with a fabulous salad and desserts. And they brought you back seconds and thirds and whatever. At that time, it was like 39 euros. So you saw all of these young people, young boys with big appetites. It's not a fancy, it's the service is a little bit hurried, efficient, let's call it. So it doesn't have that, that slow, formal atmosphere. But let me tell you, it was good. And there are a few of those in Paris. And that's in the 6th arrondissement. And I love it there. It's very walkable. And, there are little gardens and hidden courtyards and tiny, narrow cobblestone streets lined with crepe stands. And then I've stayed in the 8th, which is very, very fancy. But you have to walk further to, it's very residential. And it's where, the area around the Georges V and Louis Vuitton. It's near the Champs-Élysées. It's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. But my preference, I like the little narrow cobblestone streets and all the little bistros and stuff there. And I just learned about the 7th last year, which has a million little restaurants and food shops. My friend stays there, and I've spent 2 days there with her now. And that's where I got the chocolates, and we bought foie gras there, and we ate it in our room when I was at the Sorbonne this winter. It's a lovely area. And 7th, the Eiffel Tower, excuse me.
I love chocolate, especially dark chocolate, and know you've tasted and written about chocolate desserts. So I have to ask you about 3 magic words: molten chocolate cake.
Well, I discovered it this is what I started to tell you, at Michel Rostang in 1995. Do I have a minute to read you a little paragraph, or should I just talk about it? This is taken from the book. I shortened it a drop. The most unforgettable chocolate dessert was the molten chocolate cake served at restaurant Michel Rostang in 1995. I was on assignment for Chocolatier magazine to write about the best chocolate desserts in Paris. By the way, none of my bridal magazines would let me write about honeymoons. They told me, if it's Paris, I'm going to write about it. You can write about the Poconos. So that's when I started finding less usual Paris assignment. Anyway, they seated me next to an open interior windows where I could see the kitchen staff. And it turned out that they could see me. So when the dessert arrived, the chocolate cake, it was a little round chocolate cake, and it had a warm, gooey, oozing chocolate center. And it was served atop of pistachio sauce with a little perfectly formed oval of pistachio ice cream. And since then, everybody has the warm chocolate cake and the molten chocolate cake. But in 1995, I had never heard of it before, and I fell in love with it. And I guess the kitchen staff saw my face, because it was like the word is orgasmic, but I don't use that in the book. So, but the word aphrodisiac or desiac is now in my culinary vocabulary. It was just the texture, and it was so sensual, and it was the warm and the cold and the oozy and the firm. It was just wonderful. Anyway, the chef saw me, and he came out to greet me and invited me back to the restaurant the following morning. Well, now this is a perk of being a travel writer too. He knew I was writing about it. And the following morning, the chef pâtissier, or the pastry chef, taught me how to make it. And it's really simple. First of all, he didn't even use a double boiler. He just melted the chocolate on top of some boiling water. And he made the batter. But the trick is that you bake it in a ramekin, but before it's fully baked, you take it out of the oven, pour some more batter in the middle, put it back in the oven for a couple of minutes. So then when you serve it and you turn it upside down, take it out of the ramekin, the center of the cake is not fully cooked. So it's the easiest thing to make if you make a chocolate cake. Any chocolate cake will do. And you do them individually. And I guess you could do it in a cupcake pan. And it's just the most delicious thing. Anyway, I've been making them at home ever since.
When and where is your next trip, Irvina? And what percentage of the time are you on the road?
Well, it depends on the year. It used to be when I retired from teaching, I spent as many days traveling, I counted them literally, as I would have in the classroom the semester I stopped teaching. Then I started traveling probably every 2 weeks out of 5 or 6. Now, and I was married, and when I traveled alone, I would go away for a week at a time and come back because I had a husband at home and I missed him and he missed me. But I've been a widow for 18 years and almost 18 years. And I now go away for longer periods of time. And then when I come home, I stay home for longer. So now I'm home until July, and then I'm going to New England with my niece, who's coming in from California and has never been to New England. So we're taking a little road trip. And then in August, I'm going away for 2 weeks. I have a wedding in Virginia. So we're going to do a few days in Washington, D.C., go to a wedding. I'm going to visit a friend in Charlottesville. Then I'm going to a wedding in California, in L.A. So what I do is arrange my travels and now I will pitch all of these destinations to editors. So I make my personal life and my travel life work together. And so these are all destinations. I don't think I've ever written about Charlottesville, although I've written about Keswick Inn. But these are destinations that I'll want to write about and visit. So, and then of course, August, and I live in Bayshore on the water. I like to stay home in summer, but I like to be in Florida in the winter, and I like to be in Europe in the spring and fall. So as long as my legs hold up and I can afford it, I'm just going to keep going.
That sounds great.
And I want to travel to promote this book too. I'll probably do that.
Our guest today has been accomplished travel journalist and Forays in France author, Irvina Liu. Thank you, Irvina, for visiting with us on Travel Itch.
Thank you, Dan.
Great interview. And viewers, with the All-Star Game and Hall of Fame induction weekends approaching, this is the perfect time to share the excitement with my latest book, The New Baseball Bible, Notes, Nuggets, Lists, and Legends from Our National Pastime. Both a bathroom book and a coffee table book, it's an unorthodox illustrated history that is really everything you wanted to know about baseball, but were afraid to ask. That's The New Baseball Bible, a great Father's Day find. Get it today on Amazon.com. And that's it for this edition of Travel Itch Radio. This is your host and writer, Dan Schlossberg. Roger Noriega will join us for our 600th episode next week. We will talk about the Mount Washington Cog Railway, sports travel and tours, and Santa Ana, California, among other things. Hope to see you then. In the meantime, thanks for watching. Good evening and stay safe.